You had a spiritual awakening. You saw beyond the illusion. You felt the ego dissolve. But now, you feel more lost than ever. This is not failure. It's the most important process your soul has ever gone through. Carl Jung understood this decades ago. At some point in the spiritual journey, especially after a deep awakening, many people expect to feel clarity, lightness, and purpose. But instead, what emerges is a silent void. The intense search ceases, the mind slows down, and suddenly, what seemed to be the peak of enlightenment turns into confusion, apathy, and a feeling of being disconnected from the world. This is the paradox of awakening. The truth appears, but along with it, the old sense of I begins to collapse. And this is not failure, it's part of the process. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, understood this phenomenon long before spirituality became a trend. He called this deep and silent stage the beginning of the process of individuation, the moment when the ego ceases to be the center and the true self begins to emerge. It's a sacred moment, but rarely understood. Many people believe that spiritual awakening is the happy ending, that moment when all doubts disappear, life gains complete clarity, and inner peace is permanently established. It's common to imagine that upon reaching this stage, we become enlightened and everything immediately makes sense. However, this is a simplistic and mistaken view of the process. Awakening, in fact, is only the beginning of a much deeper and more challenging journey. What happens at this moment is the collapse of the old identity that until then gave meaning to life. This identity is made up of beliefs, habits, social roles, and values that sustain our sense of who we are. When this structure falls apart, we feel a void and intense confusion because we are no longer who we believed ourselves to be, yet we haven't found a new clear meaning or purpose. Carl Jung, pioneer of analytical psychology, expressed this experience with a powerful phrase: enlightenment is not imagining figures of light, but making the darkness conscious. This darkness represents the repressed, painful, and unknown parts of our psyche that emerge during the awakening process. It's not just about light and joy, but about facing the inner shadows. AT is precisely this confrontation with darkness that allows true transformation. Therefore, awakening is not the end of the journey, but the starting point for a deep process of self-knowledge and reconstruction of the self from a more authentic and integrated foundation. Understanding this helps avoid frustration and the feeling of being lost, which are common during this phase. After the collapse of the old identity, you enter a space that Carl Jung calls the limbo, a state between the old and the new, where you feel neither completely lost nor fully found. At this moment, traditional motivation disappears because the goals and desires that once guided your life no longer make sense. You're not depressed, but you're in a deep, necessary pause for transformation. This limbo is a sacred process, a space where your psyche needs to metabolize the internal changes. It's like the metamorphosis of a caterpillar inside its cocoon. Everything seems stagnant, chaotic, and meaningless, but it is precisely there that the transformation happens. Jung warned that modern society fears this emptiness and tries to avoid it at all costs, filling it with distractions, excessive work, and external stimuli. Understanding this phase as a natural and essential stage helps you accept what you're going through, avoiding self-judgment and confusion. This interval prepares you to emerge more whole, aligned with a new sense of being that doesn't depend on the ego or old patterns. At this stage, the real work of inner reconstruction begins, which Carl Jung called individuation, the process of integrating the fragmented parts of your psyche to become a more complete and authentic being. It's not about eliminating the ego, but aligning it with something greater. your true self, which connects your deepest essence to the world around you. Individuation is a long and challenging path, as it requires facing fears, shadows, and repressed aspects of the personality that arise during this period of transformation. You stop living to please others, prove something, or fit external patterns and start listening to the genuine needs of your soul. Jung emphasized that this process is not linear. There are advances, setbacks, moments of clarity, and moments of confusion. But it is precisely this dynamic that allows you to reconnect with a deeper motivation, one that is not imposed by the ego, but born from authenticity and internal integration. Accepting this journey and respecting the time it requires is essential to emerge from limbo with a new sense of purpose and vitality. After crossing the limbo and beginning the process of individuation, a new form of motivation starts to emerge, deeper, calmer, and aligned with your true self. This motivation is not driven by fear, social pressure, or the need for approval, but by an inner calling that Jung called the emergence of the self. This energy doesn't work like the old one, which was fast, anxious, and focused on external results. Now it is subtle, steady, and guided by a sense of alignment and purpose. You begin to act not to impress, but to express your inner truth. This new motivation may seem slower or less intense, but it is far more sustainable and fulfilling because it is rooted in your genuine growth and your connection to something greater than the ego. You start to realize that the true movement of life is a dance between action and pause, doing and being, allowing for a more authentic and creative expression. Jung said this is the moment when life ceases to be merely about survival and becomes about meaning. This transformation is the true awakening, not just of the mind, but of the soul. Even as the new motivation begins to emerge, it's common to still face periods of emptiness, confusion, and even internal resistance. This phase is a fundamental part of the personal reinvention process, where old habits, beliefs, and structures fall away to make room for the new. Jung warned of the danger of spiritual bypassing when people try to skip this difficult phase by using superficial ideologies or practices to avoid the discomfort of the void. This bypass blocks true growth and traps a person in a cycle of emotional and spiritual stagnation. The key to moving forward is allowing yourself to feel without rushing, respecting the time needed to integrate the changes. It is in this space that you begin to discover your true direction, guided not by external pressures, but by the inner calling of the soul. With patience and self-compassion, this phase transforms into fertile ground for creating an aligned life, where meaning and authenticity become the new forces driving your actions. An essential step to move out of the void and continue the journey of individuation is integrating the shadow, those repressed, denied, or ignored aspects within you. Jung taught that the shadow should not be avoided but recognized and embraced, as it is a fundamental part of our wholeness. Integrating the shadow means honestly facing your weaknesses, fears, and negative patterns without judgment. By doing so, you break the cycles that kept you trapped and release vital energy that was blocked. This integration brings balance, harmony, and a sense of wholeness that no longer depends on external circumstances. It is when you realize that light and shadow coexist and that true strength comes from the complete acceptance of yourself. This deep and courageous process allows you to live with more authenticity and inner peace, paving the way for a life richer in meaning and connection. Individuation is an ongoing journey, not a final destination. Even after integrating the shadow and finding new motivation, life will continue to present challenges and opportunities to grow and deepen self-knowledge. Jung emphasized that true awakening does not eliminate internal conflicts, but transforms how you face them with awareness, acceptance, and courage. Every obstacle becomes a chance to express your essence more fully. Living the process means embracing both light and shadow, accepting cycles of progress and setbacks, and maintaining a constant practice of self-observation and reflection. Thus, the journey of awakening becomes a path of continuous expansion, where you become increasingly aligned with your true self and the flow of life. This is the true fractal wisdom, realizing that every moment, no matter how challenging, is part of a larger pattern of growth and evolution. Awakening is not the end of the quest, but the beginning of a deep process of transformation. The emptiness and loss of motivation you have felt are not signs of failure, but of something greater forming within you. By integrating your shadows. Respecting the phase of silence and reinvention, you are building a new foundation to live with more authenticity, balance, and purpose. Remember, true motivation is not the ego's urgency, but the silent strength of the soul guiding you toward a more aligned and meaningful life. If this video touched you or helped you better understand your journey, leave a comment and share your experiences. Subscribe to the channel to continue exploring deep psychology, spirituality, and inner wisdom. Your journey is just beginning, and the best is yet to come.